You're listening to Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G., a podcast that invites you to experience the world through the perspective of one black man, one conversation, one story, or even one rant at a time. Here's Dr. G.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to another exciting podcast episode of Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G. Hey, I just want to say thank you all for listening to me when I recently just have pushed the fact that we need you to really subscribe. People are telling me that they're listening to the show, but we want subscribers. Well, you've been doing it, and I appreciate it. Hey, I just want to give you some information about how people are listening around the world. So, of course, the U.S. is our largest listening audience, but the UK actually outpaces Canada. So it's UK, then it's Costa Rica, then Canada. But rounding out like my top 8 is Vietnam, Australia, and Namibia, Africa. So I want to say to my friends in Costa Rica, hola, ¿qué tal? I want to say hello to folks in Canada, what's up? Namibia, my people, listen, I need you all to tweet out at me or post something up on the Dr. Alex G Facebook page or write me a note on alexg.com. But I appreciate the fact that you all are listening around the world. What we're trying to do is create an environment where folks in this country and obviously around the world get a better insight of what's happening in the lives of everyday African Americans as they go about work, family, play, relaxation. And this is exciting. And so, I don't know, Eli, when we started this, last year, I don't think that I expected people to be listening from Namibia.
No.
And I don't know how people are finding out either. So they must be Googling something, but I'm really excited about that. So listen, if you are from Namibia, and you are, and you're listening, and you do, come on, hit me up, reach out to me, because I want to find a way to interview you. Now I know there's a huge time difference, but hey, Eli is edgy. He's got this real big beard. He's it's a former Apple guy, so he's used to working, 14 days a week. And so we're going to find a way to interview. But I would love to do an interview with someone from Central America, from Vietnam, from Namibia, from Switzerland. Wow, Laos is right up there as well. So there's a strong Asian and Southeast Asian listening group from Vietnam and Laos. That is fantastic. So that's great. So Eli, I got a couple of things that's going on. We recently talked about the situation where I was doing a Cliff Notes event. We offer this U.S. Black History course for 250 non-Black participants each year. We had 100 people on the waiting list. So Eli and I and our team put together sort of what we call the Cliff Notes, a quick overview of U.S. Black history in a 1 hour lecture. And the deputy sheriff came in and pulled out some of the participants. And they were men who were there for a support group for formerly incarcerated men. It's called Man Up. We've been running this group for 10 years, for a decade. And of course, 3 to 4 times a year, a deputy will stop by to make sure that folks who are supposed to be there are there. That makes sense because many of these men are released from Huber, which is a work release program for folks who are almost finished with their jail sentence, where they still live in one of our jail facilities, but they get out for work. So these men come to our support group and go back to jail. And we do that, basically without hardly any incident. From time to time, things would get a little weird, but nothing dangerous, nothing that's harmful to the folks who are participating. So it wasn't a shock that the deputy sheriff came in, but it was a shock that she wanted to give a breathalyzer test to everyone and right, 20, 30 feet from where I was lecturing. So as we said, we had the foresight to my staff member, Aaron, to take them downstairs so that they wouldn't be further embarrassed. But when I told the story online, the pushback was I should have called the sheriff rather than posting this. So I become divisive because I talk about what's happening to these folks. And ironically, I'm lecturing about the history or the lack of history between law enforcement and African Americans. So I have a phone conversation that's coming up later today with the sheriff, David Mahoney. We've been exchanging things back and forth. I meant to write deputy sheriff when I said someone came by deputy sheriff, and I just ended up writing sheriff. Well, I wasn't saying that the head sheriff, the elected official, makes these random calls. I know better than that. But someone got him fired up and said, "Hey, this guy is out here and he said, he's saying this stuff about you." So we're going to talk, but it's interesting to me, Eli, that people are telling black folks how to protest. Like if you take a knee, that's anti-military.
Right.
If you stop traffic, I was part of a protest on campus a year or two ago where the group stopped the homecoming parade. Like they just blocked traffic right at State and Lake Street. It wasn't the most comfortable moment of my life, but I got what they were doing, so I was there showing my support for the African-American students. But that was unconscionable. There was just a situation that took place, I'm drawing a blank on what campus this was, but where students were doing some things in blackface. And so students went to the basketball game, raised their fists, but they didn't rush the court. They didn't interrupt the game. And so if we show up and dress in some, in a uniformed way, that's making people uncomfortable. If we talk about it, it makes people uncomfortable. If we post something on Facebook, let's get all the facts. I'm just stating what happened. I'm not saying, I'm just saying I've been doing this for 10 years. The deputy came in, pulled all the guys out, no matter what, regardless of what the situation was. You don't do that in plain view or in the room right next to where I'm lecturing, because people are then watching what's going on. But it's interesting. There was just such a huge thread. And here's why I think that there was a thread, Eli. I'm learning I'm wising up. People expect black people to get pissed when something goes down. But our white allies wrote letters. Our white allies and our white friends spoke up. That's a whole nother thing. That's something that elected officials, law enforcement is not used to. They're used to having to deal with NAACP and Urban League and the head of the Black Church Council. They're used to that. They're not used to white residents saying, "Wait a minute, I pay taxes. This is appalling. So give us the reason." So it's been almost a week. I still don't know the reason. The sheriff and I were texting last week, writing last week. So he told me to call him on Wednesday. He told me to call him, in a few days when he'd have more information. So I'm going to do that today. But it's interesting that I have to justify why I decided to defend these men, because I know the sheriff. I can call them and get information, but those men go home demoralized. And so once I find out what the reasoning was, am I going to go back up in the jail and find them? And who knows if each of them will be back next week for Man Up. So they're going to be coming back home soon. They've got to believe that there are people who have their backs and who can believe their stories and who can say that was an injustice. And at worst, it was embarrassing at best. But how often do they have people really rallying for them? Their families many times are disheartened or not around. And it's not necessarily the wardens or the jailers. They need to see strong men who look like them defending them. So why does that make me a bad guy? Because I want to say this is what's happening. So when you blow the whistle, you're the troublemaker. But the lady who came in and decided to pull these guys out, she's not the troublemaker.
Yeah, I know. I've been learning in this history class through Justified Anger about containment this week, which was an aspect of history that I hadn't really thought about, even though I kind of knew, had seen it, but I didn't think about it.
And for folks who don't know what you mean by containment.
So this was had to do more with like the Cold War and during communism was happening. And so there's this idea that in America, if we all kind of rallied together to kind of hold up what it means to be American, that we would fight these sort of communist ideas in our country. And so that often meant sort of fitting this mold of what it meant to look like American, live like American, fit into that standard. But then when the civil rights movement, for example, rose up, that it kind of looked like it was going against this sort of patriotic idea.
It caused a threat to our perceived to how we want to be perceived in the world as a very democratic and fair nation.
And so any sort of pushback against our government or kind of the standard view of what you should be, kind of the American dream and everything, looked like you were against that. So you could be labeled a communist or...
Which happened.
or just a dissenter or something like that. So I think that still carries through. We see that today. So
sure.
like, not standing for the national anthem, we say, why can't you just, be patriotic? And why do you have to go against America in that way? Why do you have to show it? But really, I think what we're trying to say is we're trying to make our country better for everybody.
Exactly.
That's why we're standing up against these things, not because we don't like America or we don't think things are working necessarily all the time, but there are things that are not working for everybody. And
there are things that are not working that are just way out of order for a lot of poor and disenfranchised and people of color. You're right. You're absolutely right. Particularly when you think about kneeling. I've never taken a knee during the national anthem. But we were at a public event in Madison last summer. One of my colleagues was hosting a table at there are 20,000, 30,000 folks here, but one of her guests didn't want to stand. And I don't even know if it was in protest. It might've been because of health issues, but they just chose not to stand. And so actually it was my sister just decided to sit with this individual. She was berated. The people at the next table came and started slamming on the table. Get up, stand up. You can't just started yelling.
Wow.
And so you don't berate people who stand. You don't berate people who don't stand. But it got so ugly that the coordinator of that event had to post on their Facebook, if you come to our public events and you continue to berate people who stand or don't stand, you will not be allowed to come back. But you don't think that people would do that in an everyday setting. And it was not a communistic movement. It wasn't an anti-American, movement. It's just people want to just say, first of all, this song has a verse in it about romanticizing slavery. I mean, I've listened to the verses. It certainly does. Yeah. That no one's going to come here and stop our liberties and stop us from having our slaves and doing what we want to do. You tell that to people and they say, well, no, that's not what it means. But someone takes a knee and we're saying they're not anti-America. No, that's what they really are. So they're responding to verses 3 or 4, whatever verse that is. But you think that verse doesn't matter because that's not what was Francis Scott Keys. That's not what he meant. That's exactly what he meant. That's what he was. That's what America was. So for people who don't want to give any credibility to that verse and to not acknowledge that black men are being shot and killed, unarmed black men, if we don't think that that's problematic, it's just like where are you living? What rock are you hiding up under? And so it's interesting that people don't want to give credence to what the song is saying. And so a song that verifies or validates slavery is now that's the mantra, that's the anthem of America. And we can't protest against that. So I'm tired of white people telling me how to protest. I experience the microaggressions and the issues, but I don't want people managing how we do that. You and I just, we reposted a letter from an African-American influencer in our community who I respect. She wrote a very thoughtful response to a superintendent's open letter. People question us, well, what's the process for sharing that kind of document? So now you want to be a white advocate and police what other black people that I can collaborate with. So now there are safe black people and unsafe black people, because in our community, we don't say that's an unsafe black person. So how dare white people come in and say, she's dangerous, he's dangerous, or this one's nice, this is who you should work with. You should really collaborate with this person. That takes a lot of nerve to come in and tell people who are experiencing something how to say ouch, or how to say, don't you do that again. Eli, I think some of the most important work that we do with our U.S. Black History course, we help would-be allies. First of all, that's sort of a daunting, someone referred to it as an ominous term, would-be allies, because there is a danger in thinking that if you listen to 2 lectures and watch the Eyes on the Prize series, that you are then an ally. And that's not so, because you have to understand the issues. Like James Baldwin said in his quote, that if you don't know what's happened in the life of black folks, you don't even understand what it means to be white in America, because becoming white is actually a response to the issue of black folks wanting equality. And so the more people study what they think is black history, the more they understand U.S. history. But every time black people made progress, there were repercussions. So, at the end of slavery, and we had Reconstruction where black people were being elected to Congress, and 40 black folks were elected to public post in the state of Mississippi, in the Old South. But you have the creation of the KKK, and then you have the creation of poll taxes and literacy tests and grandfather clauses. If your grandfather didn't vote, you can't vote. The pushback was against black progression, against the success of black folks. And so as black people succeeded, there was pushback. But then when we responded or spoke out against that conduct, we were further vilified. So you have people who are journalists, Ida B. Wells, who they're writing about lynchings. They're talking about what's going on. Then you have people their lives being threatened, run out of towns because they're saying black men are being lynched. And so, historically, when we progressed, when we succeeded, there were issues. And when we spoke against it, there were issues. And so one of the key things that we're trying to teach would-be allies is watch, listen, observe, learn. Doesn't mean you can't have an opinion, but you can't tell black people who their leaders are. You can't tell black people how to respond to their pain. You can't tell black people to quiet down. And you can't tell black people how to organize themselves. And so one of the things I know a large portion of our listeners are white, and they're listening in because they're wanting to understand race relations. And these are some of the things that I think people do to make a mistake. A person would typically give their background before they do something that crosses the line. So before I tell you how to be black or respond black, I'm going to tell you, people have said this to me. I've dated black guys, Alex. People have told me I've lost my virginity to black people or a black person. I want you to know I've adopted a black person. My niece dates a black guy. My grandchildren are black. I volunteer at this organization. So that's just sort of to give themselves the credentials or to share their credentials and then say, this is what I think you need to do. When we first formed Justified Anger, a fellow nonprofit executive came to my office. Now, my original team were 3 men and 3 women, myself included, 2 other men and 3 women. She came to my office and said, I think you need more women in your coalition. I said, it's 50-50. And she said, oh, I didn't know that. Well, maybe you need to advertise that better. Or do you need to do your homework better? Because it was in a newspaper. It's on our website. I sent emails out about it. It's clear, 3 women, 3 men. But I would never go to her. Let's just say she's creating something for the rights of women. I would never go and say, there's not enough testosterone on the platform. I think you need some men just to kind of balance things out. I would never do that. But the audacity to come to black folks in that same conversation, she said, well, do you know this person? Black, of course, because there's the assumption we all know each other. And I said, yes, I do know them. And she said, I like him. I said, well, I do too. I think he needs to be part of your coalition. Okay, so you told me I need more women. Now you're telling me that you now want to suggest who's in my coalition. And why do you like that person? I'm not questioning them. I'm not, but why do you like them? Do you like them because they make you feel good? Because we don't tend to like people who rub us the wrong way. I noticed that the more vocal I become, the fewer friends I have, or the fewer. Well, we're always nice, cordially, but I become somewhat unpredictable because I'm not the nice little clean cut black kid who delivered newspapers that I was 40 years ago. I've had too many experiences, and I want to speak out against them. But how do you sit in a black man's office as a white woman and tell me how to run my business of speaking up for the rights of black people? I mean, the crux of my Justified Anger article, and folks who might be just joining Black Like Me, you got to look through my archives. You got to go to my media page on alexg.com. You got to read my op-ed piece called Justified Anger, because it's really what set off the movement of really speaking about injustice in my community. And honestly, that started the process of thinking about how I was going to regain my voice. And this podcast, Black Like Me, is a result of that. But the crux of the letter was, or my article was, black people need to set the table. We need to stop having white people set it, and then we're invited in as an afterthought and asked to rubber stamp it. Did she not read my letter? Did she not read the article? So did she think it was her place to come and tell me who to put on my team? Doesn't she think if she knows that black man, I know that black man? He's a fellow clergy. Doesn't she think I would know that fellow clergy? But the audacity that I'm in this world. I fight for race relations to I'm your sister in this. I'm going to tell you how to do it. That level of arrogance is just crazy. Now, if we have a rapport and we processing, that's different. I'm not saying white people have nothing to say, but you've got to be asked or you got to be trusted. She was neither asked nor trusted. So you can't just come in my office telling me how to run my business. So then I turn the tables on her. I said, so tell me about your mission. I hear you only have one black person on your board or no black people in key leadership. Well, we've got white people who have just stayed forever, and I can't fire them, right? And so we have to wait for them to retire. And I said, wait. So you just told me what I need to do. Now you're explaining the resilience of white employees who don't want to retire. So you're coaching me on how to do this work, and you have not done it among your own ranks. Well, I'm trying. I said, well, maybe you need to advertise that more. But just the thought that you have not done work at home, one black person on your board, no black people in executive positions, but you're going to coach me on a black movement, a black-led black movement. So anyway, I'm kind of getting keyed up here. But because I know folks are listening who want to really learn and lean in, just something to understand. Take the time to be trusted. Take the time to be asked. Take the time to prove that you really care. And you can't come in those circles to get an extra badge, to license you, to say something that's really, really inappropriate. Mm-hmm. And so that really takes a lot. And people are so oblivious to it, they don't think about it as being racially insensitive. Black people talk to me all the time about how they're coached by white people about how to be good black people.
Wow.
Because people want to raise us up to be black people who don't rock the boat, who don't make white people uncomfortable. And so it's just, yeah. So for 5 years, people have been asking me about being angry. And really, when I'm asked how long I'm going to be angry, it makes me angrier. I want to read something. A guy wrote me this note, community leader, and he wrote and just said, hey, Pastor, I have this thought about you and all the people who don't like you or your message are being angry. He says, anger is actually proof of at least a seed of hope. It's the action and demand for action that brings about change, that which was hoped for. It's not waiting for optimistic feelings or for everything to change and then hope can be had, because then hope is not hope because it's seen. Being angry but not sinning is the articulation of injustice without committing another injustice against another. And the majority culture folks who feel like it's reverse racism or injustice against them, they feel that injustice because their own self-benefiting justice system is being threatened and therefore insecure because their systems of security are being dismantled. Anger is simply the demand and passion for hope to be made visible. If people keep something in the state of hope, they never have to steward a responsibility to bring that future reality into the present. I just said, man, that was just profound. May I reuse it anonymously? He said, of course. But then I dropped a quote to him from Augustine of Hippo. Hope has two beautiful daughters. Their names are anger and courage. Anger at the way things are, and courage to see that they do not remain as they are. He had never read that quote, but that's basically what he was saying, that folks are so concerned about someone taking a knee or stopping a parade or voicing their opinion or posting a picture about something that appears to them as unjust, as an act of injustice or something that's unjust, or at least inconsistent with what we've experienced with the Dane County deputies over the past 10 years, that seems angry, and not realizing that is that level of anger that moves folks to action. Mm-hmm. Because when folks are just placid, when they're comfortable, and when they're not inconvenienced, things are just perpetuated. And right now, the real danger in America is not just tiki torch carrying, khaki pants wearing, that kind of like a nice flow. I like that. Guys in places like Charlottesville. It's the silent majority sitting on their sofas saying, it's not harming me. I don't see color. I would interact with more black people if I knew them, but I live in this community. So I'm just hoping this is helpful with people when they're thinking about or thinking before they speak out against the way people protest. Because anything black people did, or Native people, Latino people, Asian American folks, anything that outsiders have done, poor people, the strike that King led in Memphis, where he was actually killed. When you fight for equality, it's always disruptive, because no one wants to lose power and no one wants to upset the status quo. And so no one's ever released power and just said, that felt good. Thank you for that. You freed me from the angst of feeling superior. So you've helped me come to my real self. When women have wanted rights, it came by a challenge, and people saying, we're not going to take this anymore. We're going to boycott. We're going to march. We're going to walk. We're going to stop. We're not going to patronize these businesses. That's what happened with the lunch counters. Those owners didn't just see the light of day. They stopped seeing green. They stopped hearing those coins in their cash registers, and they thought, crap. Now these folks are in my pocket. And if there's, I don't like black, but I love green, and green will make me not worry so much about black. So it's never been comfortable. So when people are tempted to tell black people, or anyone that's just being discriminated against, but this show is Black Like Me, against black people, think 4 times, not even twice. Think 4 times before criticizing what people are doing. Because one, you don't always know what it costs them to do that, and they're doing that for other people. And while I'm on that subject, Eli, can I just rant just a little bit further?
Please.
The state of Wisconsin entertained a resolution for Black History Month. That's February, the coldest, shortest month of the year. We all say that, but you know what? I'm glad we have it, because it was a week growing up. So even though it's the coldest and the shortest, I love February, and the fact that America gives credence to the contributions of African Americans. So I won't even belittle that it's the shortest or coldest. We just want more. If it were May, we'd have something to say. But the first resolution that the Black Caucus, the black senators and representatives, it acknowledged Colin Kaepernick, both his actions and the cost of those actions to him personally. I think we all just sort of sat back over the past couple of years and just thought, there's no real repercussion for what he's doing. He's going to get a job. He's going to get a job. He's going to get it. It's becoming apparent to folks that he's not going to get a job, or that he hasn't gotten one, and why. And the divide between why we think that needs to be a show in and of itself, Eli. We need to do that. Mm-hmm. But somehow Kaepernick was named, and I can't remember why. I don't know if he visited Wisconsin, if he lived in Wisconsin. I think I heard he might have been born in Wisconsin, but he has some roots in Wisconsin. The white members of the legislature said, we're the majority. We're not going to pass this if his name is mentioned, because he's disruptive. He's angry. The black people say, hey, wait. You going to tell us who we can recognize? We talk about Nat Turner, and he was an insurrectionist. We talk about other people. Harriet Tubman wasn't nothing nice. I heard she was carried a pistol, and if she got you out in the woods and you said, I want to go back to Massa, she says, look, you either going to go see Jesus tonight, or you're going to follow the drinking gourd, but you're not about to go back to Massa. No, because I'm not going to be a slave again, and you're not going to get me shot. That she threatened people's lives. So we can look back and sort of romanticize those folks. Long and short of it is, the white members rejected it. The black folks had to go back and redo their resolution. Now, I'm honored that I'm named in that, in terms of folks in Wisconsin who are doing great work. 2019, I really, really respect that. I was recommended by Representative Sheila Stubbs, who appeared on the show. She came on here as she was candidating to become the first black representative from Madison to be a part of the state legislature. She had some egregious things that happened afterwards, and she was like on, prime time with Chris Cuomo and stuff, because people called the police because she and her mom and her 6 or 7-year-old daughter were canvassing the community, and they were thought of as drug dealers. Yeah, 3 women, grandma, mom, and daughter. Yeah, they're always peddling crack. I hate when that shit happens. But she added me to the resolution. She nominated my name. So I'm very honored. So this is a shout out to Representative Sheila Stubbs and to the Black Caucus and others who rallied behind that recommendation. But we have a resolution where white folks said, black people, you're not going to have a resolution that will be listed for perpetuity that's going to name the likes of Kaepernick. But we have buildings in our state named after people who enslaved folks. We have monuments and name plaques to people at UW-Madison who are part of a KKK movement on campus. You can do all of these things, own slaves, rape people, but you're a great founding father, you're a great leader, all of these things. But if you take a knee during the national anthem in response to the unprecedented numbers of black men, unarmed black men being shot and killed by police officers, even as they're running away, proving that they pose no threat to them, we cannot mention his name. Black people, elected officials, cannot mention his name in a document that is supported by the state of Wisconsin. So again, that's white people policing us, which we learned in history class, which is something that white people were allowed to do. If you see someone black, it is your duty as a white American, question their freedom, ask to see their papers, and then verify what those black people are saying with slave owners. Do they belong to you? Should they be out here? Should they be shopping? Should they be out here with this horse? Should they be out here with children? So, yeah, it's just very, very interesting. It takes a lot to organize a movement. It takes a lot to rally people. It takes a lot to say, let's write letters, let's make phone calls, let's show up. But then we can't have folks who consider themselves progressive telling black people how to respond. The state motto of Wisconsin is forward. But people who push for that forwardness can't be named in any resolutions that we put forward. So I just want people to think about this. If you live in Wisconsin, write your representative and ask them why they did or why they didn't support that resolution. I think it was called the Black History Resolution. So for my Wisconsin family, brothers and sisters, you each have a representative. Email them, write them, call them, reference this podcast, reference that resolution, and ask them how they responded and why. Hey, your tax dollars are putting them there. Your elections are putting them there. People who choose to tell another group of people how to respond, how to live, but also how to respond to their own pain can never be true allies. So you got to choose. If you're going to tell me how to hurt and tell me how to respond to that hurt, you are not my ally. Plain and simple. You have lost that credibility. And that may be a hard line, but it's true. I'd rather for you to know it than not know it. That way you can understand. Well, we feel like we're silenced or muzzled. No, but you just have to understand, unless you've walked in these shoes, unless you understand this, stop telling me that's not what someone means. That's not what they said. That's not why they stopped you. You know, people who are telling me that I should have called the chief, and you're an elected official. Why did you not call the chief? Why did you not respond to your fellow elected officials? Is this a problem? Have we heard of this happening before? What should be the course we take when these things happen? How do we respond when there's the perception of injustice? And if what G said was wrong, how do we rectify the situation so that we have a conversation to say, oh, I misunderstood what they were saying. They were trying to really promote safety in the building. But if we were wrong, how do we then communicate to the community we've got to do better? And so I just want people to really take a good, long look at this, because we celebrate the fact that we protested the Vietnam War in the streets. We had sit-ins so that we could get a black student union, but a black studies department. We fantasize about that. We are the Berkeley of the Midwest. We protested in the 60s. We took to the streets. We burned bras and we blocked intersections. But we want to ride on those laurels and damn the very people who do what sort of put us on the map as being liberal and progressive. We want to then badmouth them because they're standing for rights, because it inconveniences us. So protest was good enough to make Madison what and who it is. But we don't want any more of it. We've got to look at it. Your community's got to take a look at it. And if we're going to build bridges to each other, and we can and we should, we got to tell the truth. And so I appreciate my would-be white allies. I appreciate my white allies. But a brother's got to do what a brother's got to do. A sister's got to do what a sister's got to do. Just keep watching, learning, listening. Understand what's prompting that, understanding what's triggering. This is one of the things I said to the sheriff. I said, Sheriff, when something like that happens, you don't know how that triggers black people in the audience and how it triggers me. I was triggered that evening. And I needed to convey that when it's aggregate pain or discomfort or injustice, who's to say, just be quiet on this one, just let it slide? Can't we just all get along? And so I just think I want us to really consider these things. People want me to reach out to white leaders so that I don't make a spectacle, but we've got to build those relationships both ways. When why didn't the deputy say to my leader who's running that group, hey, Dr. G's only got 25 more minutes of his lecture. Can you just wait until he's finished? Then that way these men aren't embarrassed. We're not resisting the breathalyzers, but can we meet halfway? Why is it always incumbent on black people to cross the line and go all the way? Why couldn't that deputy meet me halfway, meet us halfway? Does the deputy know that I'm in a relationship with the sheriff? Does the deputy know that I'm one of those safe places? But when I talk about it, the response is, we thought you were safe. We thought we were partners. We thought we could trust you. We thought that you wouldn't throw mud at us. When did I ever say that by being in partnership with white influencers, that I would abdicate my responsibility to stand up for black people? Why do folks think that because I can come to meetings and mediate and be sensible and be fair and be articulate and be clear, why does someone misread that as not calling you on your shit? When have I ever said that your niceness, white people, is going to muzzle me? Do you understand how quickly I would lose credibility with myself, my God, my family, and my community if I just followed the status quo and decided to be quiet and let me get the answers? Now, I'm not going to go and accuse anyone of anything. I never posted. She was a racist. She came here with her gun blazing in the air. She said, everybody put your hands up, get down on the floor. All the black people come and follow me. We're going to have you spit and breathe in this tube. I never said that. I said it was disruptive. I said it was embarrassing. And I put a picture up of black men. People drew their conclusions. I didn't say that had anything to do with racism. I said it had to do with something that was injustice, that it was injustice, and that it lined up with a part of my lecture about the interaction between black and law enforcement. Where did I lie? What did I say that was wrong? So I just need folks to understand that if you're a would-be white ally, and a black person calls out something or challenges a systemic reality, you don't have the right to silence them. And you got to understand that we wrestle with this day in and day out. And there's some days we can take it better than others. But you have to understand that just because you've befriended someone who's black doesn't mean that they're not going to challenge systemic stuff. And it doesn't mean that they're going to stop being black. People forget that because I can build a bridge and walk across it does not mean that I don't go back to being black and understanding what it means to be black and speaking up on behalf of black folks. Because what's happening in this country is that all types of egregious things are happening to black folks, and it's not raising the same eyebrows and it's not getting the same response as it would if it happened to someone else. So, that's enough on that. Man, we record, the podcast pretty early. So the best I can do is either coffee or tea, but this ain't cutting it today. So Eli, we might have to start recording in the evening so I can get a little something to something just to keep it going. But you all, thank you for being a part of this space, because I want to speak honestly with you. I want a place. I've created a space where I don't have to cut corners or water down or dumb down my position. And so my goal is that people understand what's happening in everyday life in America, but that people are still rising above it. We're not just sitting over here just complaining and so I'm not going to go to work because I'm mad at the deputy. I'm not going to go to work because I'm mad at the president. I still got to pay bills and work and help my daughter get into grad school and work on my marriage and lead a church and lead a movement and write books. I'm going to still do that. So I'm not complaining and shutting down just for the sake of complaining, and I'm not shutting down. I'm letting people know what I must rise above, what black people must rise above every day in order to be just as good and better than their non-black counterparts. And you all get a chance to listen in on Black Speak that most non-blacks rarely get a chance to hear. So you have been privileged to be a part of another great episode of Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G. I'll continue to say, subscribe. You know someone who needs to hear this episode, share it with them, ask them to subscribe. You can tweet out these episodes You can share them on your social media. Let people know that you're listening to Black Like Me. Don't be afraid. I want you to. I want you to say, I'm white and I support Black Like Me. I'm Asian American and I support Black Like Me. I'm Latino and I support Black Like Me. I want you to support Black Like Me. So, hey, thank you for being a part of what we're doing. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring. And thank you for allowing this to not just be heady, but to make its way to your heart so that eventually it will begin to present itself in action. But we want you to be changed inside because that's the only way you can bring about change outside. And we think that Black Like Me is a wonderful tool for that, to facilitate that process. You know someone who needs help with that process, so share this link with them. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast. You can find out more about Dr. Alex G's amazing work at www.alexg.com. Black Like Me is sponsored by the generosity of the Human Family Unity Foundation.